Alright everybody, this is UXW Bill here again, and tonight I'm going to talk a little bit about my computer room stereo system. This is a stereo system that was put together on the cheap. It's driven by a Pioneer SX253R stereo receiver that I paid a whopping 50 cents for at some ham fest. Bought it from an old man who said it didn't work, and it definitely doesn't have a cover. So I took it home, I plugged it into some cheap boombox speakers, I turned it on, and nothing caught on fire, and it seemed to work just fine. There were no county-wide power outages or black holes. So it became the stereo for my basement stereo system, which is one of the oldest stereo systems that I've had set up. And it consists of a couple of different pieces. There used to be a computer up here, and that was the nice thing about this receiver, is that it has so many line-level inputs. It has a Tape 1 VCR, Tape 2 monitor, Laserdisc, compact disc, and well, that's about it. There's a turntable one, but it's not line-level, of course. So it had enough inputs to play every source that I wanted to play, and presently the only sources that I have left are the Sony 400 CD changer, which is full mainly of blank CDRs to make it look really impressive. It does look kind of cool with that blue light back there. It's a CDP-CX455, and it's overkill for the application. I don't think I'll have 400 CDs, maybe not for the rest of my natural life. But it can play MP3s, and it seems to be the only Sony disc changer that ever was sold with that capability. The system plays into a total of 4 speakers. It's just stereo, so they're an A and B set. The first set is a set of Sony SS-U3033 speakers. They're bookshelves with a 6.5-inch woofer. They sound good. The back speakers, which I'm not going to show you because I'm not very proud of the shape this room is in, are actually a pair of AR Acoustic Research Model 25s. And then there's a cheap Radio Shack equalizer right there that actually got plugged into the tape deck, although the tape deck has been stolen and is in use with the computer right now, because I was digitizing some record albums that way. There's a turntable, a Technics DC servo automatic turntable system, an SL-BD20. This was something that came from that vintage audio sale and was in perfect condition apart from the fact that it needed a stylus badly. I got it at the same time I got the penny stereo, and they both had Shure cartridges on them, so they both ended up with very similar Shure styli from Radio Shack, because you could buy such things there at the time. It was in perfect shape until we put it in the trunk of the Cadillac and stacked it on a bunch of other stuff that we'd purchased, and then the automatic trunk came down, and as you can see, it very definitely cracked the lid. But the real showpiece of this stereo system, the thing that I'm most proud of, and is a bit of an unusual bird, is this Kyocera DA-610 compact disc digital audio player. This is an early compact disc player from 1986 according to its manufacturing date, and there can be no doubt this thing was not built to a price tag. Its internal layout is incredible. The precision, the thought that went into making it. It's got gold-plated audio outputs on it. It supports a remote control, although I've tried a number of universal remotes and never gotten anywhere with it. I can sometimes get the little receive indicator to light up, which indicates the carrier and the bit rate's approximately correct, but the commands aren't being understood. So I don't really need the remote. It says something about it down there. It has the typical transport controls, variable headphone out, a play indicator, an alphanumeric 14-segment vacuum fluorescent display that's blue in color and has no phosphor burn whatsoever, a telephone keypad over here to directly enter tracks and to program the memory, a repeat and a time remaining button, all kinds of neat stuff, a timer function that if you turn that switch on, the moment this thing gets power, it'll start playing. It's just an incredible piece of equipment, and it sounds phenomenal. Now, the previous owner had taken a lot of care of it, but when I was at the vintage audio sale, where the turntable and the penny stereo and all this other stuff comes from, they said it wouldn't play past track 1. Well, it turns out that like a lot of older CD players, this thing's got a laser carriage lock on the bottom of it that's fastened with some screws. And the previous owner had been thoughtful enough to fasten those screws and protect the laser assembly from any potential damage, but they didn't know that, and so they were right. It would not play past track 1, and it wasn't even very happy about doing that. So I freed that up and I found that the door switch had an attitude problem. Turns out the limit switch that tells it whether it's open or closed was all dirty and corroded, and so the microcontroller thought, oh, the door must not have opened, and it just reversed it and sent it the other way. Anyway, it does make some use of the fact that it has an alphanumeric display. For example, there's no disk in it right now, so it'll tell us to put one there. And instead of having colons or anything as time separators, it actually has semicolons, which is kind of cool. And when you press the open button, the display does something cool. It opens along with the tray, I guess you could say. So I'll put a CD in there. This is the very best of John Williams and the Boston Pops from Reader's Digest. And the reason I chose that particular CD is because this thing has an interesting bug in its firmware. When you have long CDs like this, or maybe it's a logic bug, but when you have a long CD like this, it'll display the track advancing time correctly toward the end. It'll display the total time remaining for all tracks toward the end, but what it won't display is the countdown time remaining for tracks beyond, say, 65 minutes or so. I don't know if it runs out of registers or what's going on, but I'll show you what happens. Here we are out at the end of this disc, and you can see the time's counting up correctly, but if I ask it for the time remaining, it shows a bunch of dashes, but it'll tell you how much time's remaining total disc. It's kind of weird. Not sure why it behaves that way. But the sound quality of this player is simply incredible. It has to be heard to be believed. In fact, I've had people come down here regarding the whole system and tell me how wonderful this thing sounded. This is really a good room for listening. Unfortunately, it's also a terrific mess. So that's why I'm not showing off any of the other stuff. And then here's just another random CD. Actually, not a random CD. A lot of record companies seem to operate under the illusion that hearing music on YouTube means they're never going to sell any of it. Well, have I got a surprise for them, because I heard this over, I think it was on V Westlife's channel. No Dolby, No Problem, I believe was the video. This is the Queen Symphonic Rock CD. I have the others from the Rolling Stones and the Beatles. There's the mode displays. And when you get to the end of a CD, we'll put it in time remaining mode here, and we'll go all the way to the end of this disc. When you get to the end of a CD, assuming you let it play down to the end, it does something cool. It displays a message. I'll just let that tick down here rather than trying to force the point and spoil it. But when it's done, it displays finished on the built-in display, which is, not really required, but it's definitely kind of cool. And then when the laser sled has run back home, it says it's ready once again. So it's a very cool CD player, very impressive piece of equipment by a company who is now better known for cellular telephones and laser printers, but once upon a time they did indeed dabble in some audio equipment, and it was impressive equipment at that. You really ought to see the power supply and the logic board and all the ribbon cables in this thing. Every component is labeled as to its function, right down to the ceramic spacers, which are identified as fine ceramic spacers, not just ceramic spacers, but fine ones. Everything is labeled on the board in English, which is kind of surprising, but it's how it is. And it has a beautiful color scheme. It's got wood panels on the side, a brushed silver front, black control panel, a charcoal colored top, and another wood panel over there. Just all around an incredible piece of equipment that I felt was worth sharing, because unfortunately it probably won't last forever. But the previous owner did really take good care of it. When I got it, I even got the manual and the receipt, although I don't know how much they paid for it. I bet it wasn't cheap. But the bottom of the receipt had unfortunately been torn off, and so that was kind of too bad. But other than that, it was a very cool find, and because they thought it was broken, I paid a whopping $1 for it. So there you have it, the story of a Kyocera DA-610 compact disc player from 1986. This is not known as a terribly powerful stereo receiver, but with the speakers that it has attached to it, it's actually an unsuspecting little powerhouse. It is loud enough in this basement to rattle your internal organs with bass and sound in general, even though there is no subwoofer in this system. And although this house has a brick-bodied basement and a heavily built top part, the rest of the house, If I turn this thing up, you can still clearly hear it outside. I don't know if it would result in getting the police called, and I don't care to find out, but it's not too shabby.